Rustin.
Gary, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man.
Happy Columbus Day. Thanks for taking a few minutes to chat.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Last year, Extreme turned 30 years old. How do you wrap your head around that?
Man, I guess you could apply it with whatever you do, but, as a band, you look at your heroes, you look at Aerosmith and the Stones and all those guys, and they're reaching 40 years and 50 years, and we're not that far behind them. We just came back from Japan. We met with the promoter, who's 82 years old. He's having a 60th anniversary coming up next year, and he introduced us to Japan in '89. So it's wild, these milestones that the band's reaching. Obviously, we're going to talk about Pornograffitti 25, and it's like, okay, I guess we're getting old.
Well, it's what you think about it. Back when you guys started, when I started doing what I do, bands, even our heroes, 10-year careers were like the limit at that time. Nobody had an idea of 20, 30, 40, even 50-year careers playing music at the time.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, everybody's reaching these watershed anniversaries. I remember an old Rolling Stone interview in the late '60s. They asked Mick Jagger, what are you going to be doing when you're 75? He goes, he doesn't know. I mean, they thought coming out of London, it was going to be a few years having fun. They didn't know the history they were going to have. We can look back in hindsight, and because of those bands. And, I remember in 1981 when the Stones did Still Life, and they were calling Mick Jagger old at 40, and 30 years later, he's still doing it. And all the bands that he, even the younger bands, the Aerosmith, the Van Halens, they're still doing it. And then the next generation, my era, that came after the Aerosmith, So it's good it's good, if you can keep it going. I don't want to do anything else. I'd like to be doing this 10 years from now,
Well, and you alluded to it already. Your iconic Pornograffitti album turned 25 last year. This month, you guys released the live DVD concert documentary commemorating the show as part of the Metal Meltdown series. What was it like to play the entire record through on stage after all these years? Because I don't even think some of those songs you never played live at all.
Correct, yeah. Well, I'll give you a little history. I think it was 2012. We went to Japan. The idea was to do Pornograffitti, 4 shows for the Japanese audience. I don't know, I was 22 years old at the time. The record was, it was past the 20th anniversary. We never even thought of doing the 20th anniversary. We're just going to do these 4 shows for Japan, call it a day. We went out there. We couldn't believe how it was received. And then we were getting calls from the States and Europe saying, why don't you bring Pornograffitti to the States? And we're like, and we thought about it, and we're like, well, the 4 shows, it was unique, but the offers were good, and we started, 13 or 14, and we've been touring it for a couple of years, and it turned into the 25th. I don't know, we went into rehearsals, we all dug up our CDs, we all relearned a lot of songs that we haven't played since the club days, some songs we never played, like When I First Kissed You, some of the songs we haven't played in 25, 30 years, the club era when we were doing Little Jack Horny and stuff like that. So that was a trip. And then to do it in chronological order. I was outvoted. Nuno and Pat, they wanted to do it in order. I'm like, I don't want to sing more than words 5th song into the set. I can't sit down on a stool. We were reluctant to do it in order. Well, I was reluctant to do it in order, but those guys convinced me, and it actually turned out being a great show. It had like an ebb and flow, The first 4 songs, the band came out and screamed through Decadence Dance, Little Jack Horny, When I'm President, and Get the Funk Out, and it was like 25 minutes of... So the show, it worked as a show, and that's what surprised the band. And it was a lot of fun. We really had a ball doing it.
Well, in the album itself, in hindsight, because you spent couple 2-3 years touring on it again, and it's hard to have perspective of the album back when you record it, but now after all these years you've had the perspective of the time, and now you've toured it live again. What's your perspective of Pornograffitti today?
Looking back, I think the band agrees it was the record. It was the record where the band found its voice. We found, it wasn't contrived. It was where we found our sound. We put out our first record in 1989, Extreme One. It was a year delayed. Should have came out in '88, but politics and it just was delayed a year. And during that year, we were writing Pornograffitti. So we're in the clubs touring our first record, and we're already tired of the first record. And we're writing Get the Funk Out and Decadence Dance, and we're finding our sound. And at the time, I don't know who called it funky metal or whatever. It wasn't funky metal. It was rock and roll. It was, groove. It had grooves. It had funk. It was influenced by the bands we grew up on, Halen, Zeppelin, and Aerosmith. They had those grooves. And, we the first record, we thought we were the sum of our influences, those bands that I mentioned. Pornograffitti came along, and we were on this writing spurt, and we were in the club. So by the time we recorded Porno, we discovered our identity. So looking back on it, we go, it's a nice document of what the band was and had hints of what we were to become, with some of the other records after that. But that was where we found our identity, Well,
and like you said, you had already written a lot of the stuff for the album before you ever got a chance to even get the first record out there. Could you feel yourselves evolving as songwriters in the moment naturally, or was the direction more purposeful?
I'd like to say that we did, but it was pure. It was instinct. We were just writing, Nuno and I, whether it was Nuno handing me a riff in a hotel room or me handing him lyrics. We were just writing, and we were inspired, hungry, passionate. And looking back on it, man, the stars aligned, because the history of Pornograffitti, was maybe a month away from not being successful. We were 9 months into the tour of Pornograffitti. I'm thinking out loud here. You're reminding me with your question, reminding me of how it went down. It just talk about the writing came natural, but I remember when we were on that first tour, 9 months into it, we released a couple songs, and we were done with the tour. We had a small club tour in Europe, and the company, and actually it was a radio station in Philadelphia, decided to play More Than Words, and that changed the course of the band. The song became bigger than the band. Now, because of the success of the song, we're jumping on the road with ZZ Top and Bon Jovi. And now, not only did we feel like we found our identity in the grooves, in the music, but now we're playing on bigger stages. So, we were either going to sink or swim, and the band swam. Yeah, we had to keep up with it. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into More Than Words, but More Than Words took us on a ride that even to this day has, we're still feeling the aftermath of the success of that song. It became bigger than the band. I'm sorry, I probably didn't answer your question, but I went off on a tangent, but I apologize.
Yeah. Pornograffitti had so much depth and texture. There were so many dynamic sonic elements to that record, just on the song Get the Funk Out alone.
When I think of Get the Funk Out, you first think of the groove, but I can't get past the solo. And I heard it, I hear it every night with Nuno. One of Nuno's best solos. A lot, if I think it was Nuno who said if you're gonna pull a song off that record and say what does Extreme sound like, that would be the song, because it had so many elements. It had the horn section. The production was pristine. The band, the musicians. I can pat those guys on the back because I'm not playing the instruments, but there was some intricate stuff going on in that song. Not just great funky bass line, but some of the grooves, some of the time signatures in that song. That was Extreme. How it happened, again, like you said, I think the band naturally evolved into writing that song. But if there were a handful of songs to identify Extreme, that would be in the top three for sure.
Absolutely. And for those out there listening, there is a segment on the documentary where Brian May of Queen talks quite generously about that guitar solo that Nuno did on that song. So you definitely want to check that out. I remember back when the album came out and you guys, the first video, Decadence Dance, MTV censored that thing. You guys couldn't even run the original video, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and it wasn't because of the girl. You know, there's a few hot-looking girls in the video at that time, but it was stupid. The reason they didn't want it was because I pretended to pick my nose, and they had a digitally generated snot fly out and hit the screen, and they wouldn't put it on. And isn't that a quaint story in 2016 that we're talking about snot, you know? And that was the reason. And so, you know, we took it out. It was played on the Headbangers Ball, and that was the first video. Second video was Get the Funk Out, and it didn't catch traction until More Than Words in the 9th month. I think we came back from Europe and did it, or somewhere in between tour. We were in LA and we did the simple, you know, black and white video. I forget the last name, Jonathan and Val. They did the directors. Got to give them credit for that video. It was, again, the stars aligning. It wasn't just a song. Even though I thought the song was unique in a day of hair metal bands and power ballads, More Than Words was not a power ballad. It didn't have the big drums, didn't have the big harmony vocals. It was Everly Brothers. It was stripped down. It was a guitar and 2 vocals. And let alone it was a black and white video, so it really stuck out as far, you know. So again, we were lucky that the visual, I believe, was just as unique as the song. So we're very lucky, very fortunate.
Well, and you said, you know, More Than Words, it sort of broke the band to mainstream audiences, which opened a lot of doors for you guys. But as you said, it sort of became bigger than the band. I've always sort of imagined in some ways, as much as it helped you guys, I always wondered, did it have any sort of negative impact because it changed the expectations placed on the band, or maybe even on yourselves?
Oh, sure. Even to this day. I mean, I think we're past it and we embraced it. But every rock band, you know, of course, we were thrilled that it was successful. But again, the song was bigger than the band. Where people were requesting it. They thought there was, you know, we joke about it now, but people thought there was just 2 Italian kids singing a song. You know, the housewives and the women that went in the record store to buy this pretty little song, and you got the clerk going, okay, that's in the heavy metal hard rock section under Pornograffitti. You know, under the name Pornography. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Yes, you are. No, it's a song by these 2 cute, you know, Italian boys, and they, you know, they're pointing. No, it's on the record Pornograffitti. So I'm sure there was a bunch of returns, you know, when that was the only song other than maybe, you know, When I First Kissed You. I don't know. The record was diverse enough. We followed that up with Wholehearted. Thank God we had a song that could maybe transition into the heaviest stuff, because, you know, people talk about More Than Words, and it was number 1. Wholehearted, you know, rode the wave of More Than Words and became number 4. So we were a band who had 2 top 5 records in a matter of 6 months. It was, for us, it was our Beatlemania. You know, it was crazy, and we rode that wave for a couple years touring after that. Like I said, you know. Then the tours came, you know, Bon Jovi, and even we backed up David Lee Roth, Cinderella Extreme. We were on that tour when that record, when More Than Words blew up, and you could see at the start of the tour there'd be a handful of people seeing the 3rd act. By the time that summer came, there were people, you know, the sheds that we were playing at the time, the Roth, they were filling up for the 3rd band because of More Than Words. It was crazy.
You guys probably weren't even playing the song initially when the tour started, right?
Right.
One of the things that always captured my ear with Extreme were the amazing harmonies and the level of musicianship, which was just so far beyond so many of the other artists of the time. Did you guys instinctively know what you had as a unit, a team, when you first came together?
Well, I think, it all starts with your influences, and we've always said we were the bastard children of Aerosmith, Van Halen, and Queen. And obviously when you mention Queen, you think of the vocals, and we're all Beatles fans. And there's something, me, Nuno, and Pat, everyone can sing, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you sound good together. We were lucky, Pat, we call him the poor man's Michael Anthony. He had this high, clean register with mine, had a little grid on it, and Nuno sang the lower harmonies. And when we sang together, it had an identity. It wasn't generic. It was the sum of its parts, and you can't manufacture that. So we were lucky in that aspect. And when that was pointed out to us, because we emphasized harmony because of the bands that we grew up on, it was pointed out. The band wasn't just the Guitar Hero band, because Nuno's a virtuoso. The vocals stood out like Van Halen's vocals stood out. So we knew it was a part of the uniqueness of the band, part of the sound. So it was again something that we didn't manufacture or contrive. It was just again that our vocals sounded good together, and we've emphasized it our whole career. Right. And the musicianship, it's funny, obviously when you mentioned Brian May, Nuno actually was moved to tears because he couldn't believe his hero was speaking so highly of him in that solo. Nuno's shared the stage with, pretty much all his heroes. He just got up Generation X with Steve Vai and Yngwie, but he's still a fan of those guys. So to hear Brian May, say those things he was pretty humbled by it. And obviously when people mention Extreme, once they get past, those are the guys that do more than words, they immediately talk about Nuno's prowess. But I think you can't sell short the other guys, whether it was Paul Gary throughout the years, and Pat Badger, who's not only a great singer, he was able to keep up. Pat's an underrated bass player.
Oh yeah.
Nuno doesn't suffer fools. Trust me. And Pat's been able, everything Nuno threw at Pat could do. Songs like Cupid's Dead off the Three Sides to Every Story comes to mind. So the band, I think, I wouldn't call us progressive, though we have progressive elements to the music, but never at the price of the groove. You still, at the end of the day, I think there was a clip on the Dick Clark show, and they played the Beatles to a fan, and the fans are going crazy, and Dick Clark goes to the 15-year-old kid, "What is it you like about the song? Why do you like the song?" And the girl goes, "I don't know. It makes me move." So I think there's a subliminal element, truth to that with Extreme. We want people to move to our music. We want people to groove. So I probably talked your ear off, but I'm so tired. I'm wired.
That's okay. So before we get out of here, tell us a little bit about the new record that I believe is due out early next year, hopefully. I know you guys have been working on the songs for quite a while. What can you tell us in advance of that? Yeah, we do. And first thing is we apologize to our fans. To get us in the same room has been the difficult thing, but we have more than enough material for a record. We've been recording, finishing up some writing. It's really whittling it down. It's been a while since we put out new music. We're not going to compromise it. We're definitely overdue. There will be, like all Extreme records, there'll be familiar elements, but also stuff over the years. When Nuno and I write, we're affected by our environment, and music changes throughout the years. So those elements there'll be some new elements to the band as well. Hopefully that always happens. You always want to grow and evolve and move on, but the guitars will be there, the harmonies will be there, the songs, the hooks, the lyrics. There'll be elements of the past, but certainly new elements. So
it'll be out next year. I don't really want to play another show until there's new material. I know there'll be some festivals and some offers coming our way, but the band's determined to finish some music up for the fans. We owe it to them.
Gary, thank you so much for taking some time. The Metal Meltdown 25th anniversary comes out. I believe the DVD set comes out this Friday, the 14th. Looking forward to the new music, and I look forward to hopefully meeting you when you guys get back on the road again for the new record.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.